From Brisbane, Australia, this is episode 102 of The Normal Blokes, a podcast dedicated to improving the competitive 40k experience. I'm Dineeth, and today I'm joined by Liam. How you doing, mate?
I'm the 102nd Dalmatian. How are you, man?
Good, bro. So we've taken a break from having a bit of fun over Christmas, playing a bit of Halo, and we're going to record about Uprising Adelaide because that's the next big tournament, COVID willing, that we'll be at. And we're going to go through, our lists. We've got a bunch of Queensland guys going down from the Normal Blokes and the Northside Alliance boys who are staying with us. We're really excited to head down. And we'll also go through a bunch of lists from the event. Me and Liam have picked 3 lists each that we're going to talk about. And kind of place our bets on who's going to do well. But for those who don't know, Uprising Adelaide is the Australian ITC Champs event, which kind of finishes our season off concurrent with LVO in the States. And at this event, the top player and faction awards and stuff are given out. It ran for, I guess, the first time strongly last year, and we all went down and we had a blast with the guys, Adam, Josh, and Simon, who ran that event last year. But I think I can speak for both of us, Liam. We're pretty keen to head down and play some hammers.
Oh, 100%. I actually think, though, that LVO is the week after.
Oh, is it? Sick. We get a head start on the meta, mate.
Absolutely. And look, I say that because I'm pretty sure there are some who are planning on attending both events. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Not Jesus. Me, but other people.
That is heavy. That is hefty. But, that's really exciting. I mean, we're pretty keen to head down, and the guys up here, we had a little games day for one of our boys, Nick's birthdays this weekend, practicing some of our lists, and we
in a COVID safe way.
In a COVID safe way, of course, masks on, and. We had two of our 8 guys change faction the day of list submission, which is always fun. But I think me and you stuck in there with our lists and had a good play test. But so the spread for all the lists looks pretty good. Liam, I'll let you take over and just talk about kind of the stuff you saw when lists came out, and then you can talk about your list.
So when the lists came out, it was really interesting because I always look at what the last rules release was before any tournament. It's really interesting to see how quickly people jump on, not necessarily the bandwagon, but things that are exciting and new. And it's also interesting to see some old staples kind of return, lists that I didn't see too much in the smaller events. It's been tough, Dineeth, because I think you'd agree with this. There haven't really been, for us in Queensland anyway, any really big events since we ran our GT. Would that be the last GT really in Queensland? There were a couple of events over like 3 weekends. There was the Northern Alliance GT2, but they were kind of all in the same month, right?
I think ours was the last. I think ours was the last 5-rounder. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So in perspective, it's been we ran that in August or September?
October this year.
September?
Yeah.
Okay. So still, it's been about 3 months since we've had a really, really big event. And it's interesting to see that some things have come back. Like when you're looking at the spread, Drakari is still prevalent. The Meat Mountain has made a resurgence. But also Sisters of Battle lists. It was interesting. They sort of faded into the mist a little bit when the Orc Buggy lists were kind of ascendant. But I'm actually noticing a couple of really, really big-name players are playing Sisters of Battle at this event. And I think Dineeth is going to talk about one of those lists later on. But also, as I mentioned before, I look at the most recent rules release. And for that, it's Tyranids, right? It's the Crusher Stampede. And those lists are here. There are a number of Crusher Stampede lists played at this event. There are a number of Harridan Crusher Stampede lists, which from what I'm hearing over in the United States is an incredibly consistent list. It's been doing quite well. And also has been picked up by quite a number of people. I mean, who doesn't want to have a 700-point model in their army that has neg-1 damage and like 30 billion wounds? So, I mean, it's interesting. I think there's a good spread of factions at this event, but not everything. I think there's no gigantic surprises to me, Dineeth. I mean, do you disagree? Was there anything that sort of stood out to you as like really weird?
No, not really. I mean, I expected there to be some heavy skew into certain builds, like the Crusher Stampede being the new quote-unquote new hotness coming out. A lot of people teching into the Meat Mountain builds for Drakari. I'm actually pleasantly surprised that they've combined the Dark Techno Chronos with the Artists of Flesh, Grotesques, and Talos, so they haven't really gone full meat for a lot of the lists, which gives them a bit of versatility. I think we talked about this on the weekend. It gives that Drukhari army that shooting pressure, that people can't just run at it, charge it, hit it hard. There's still flamers they have to get around,
which I think it needs, right?
Oh yeah, man, and it needs the ability to really burn the screens away before the Grots and the Talos get in there, which is cool. And there's 100%. A few little tech pieces that I'll talk about one of the Drukhari lists and on some of the tech it's got. But the orcs, I think, are what scare me the most, because having seen what the speed mob does, it's still pretty horrific, man. And now the buggies have invos, so life's good. So those lists, I think, if they go first and really pop off on an army that's not expecting it, they're still going to do a lot of damage, even with the nerf, I guess, to orcs. I learnt on the weekend what a custom booster blaster does, and that scares the shit out of me. So, there's still stuff in that book, and there's a few lists, yours included. The combat orc lists that are coming out that are doing a lot of work. So, look, no surprises I saw. It's similar to what I expected, but the skew is still there, and I'm excited to see if I can test my mettle against some of these lists.
Boom, boom. So like you mentioned, we're going to start off by talking about our lists, and then we're going to go into talking about a couple of highlight lists. We're looking at these highlights in terms of interesting lists that we think were either expected or sort of shook things up a little bit, not necessarily the people playing them are the to-watch players, but I really like that the lists that we're going to talk about are going to be some medalists and some off-medalists. Mm-hmm. Speaking thereof, I'm going to start talking about my list. Dineeth and I really like to give people a heads up about how we play the game. Maybe I just really like shooting myself in the foot. And Dineeth just probably wants to make all the Speedwile lists feel sorry for him. I'm very sorry, Dineeth. Sorry, man. Dineeth mentioned that I'm playing Orcs, which is 100% true. I played Orcs for a really, really long time, and I took a break and played Thousand Suns, which I've really, really enjoyed. More recently, I've been looking back again at Orcs because, like you mentioned, some of the Orc melee stuff I think is absolutely top tier. I think it can really do some incredible damage. So I am playing Goths. My whole army is Goths. There's no clan versatility there. I've just got a Supreme Command and a battalion. So I've got Gazgul. I've got the standard smashy Goth Warboss. I've got a Weird Boy, which is, I'm trying some more of the Orc Psyker stuff in this list, as you'll see. I've also got 30 Beast Snaggers, 3 units of 10, and then a unit of 10 Truck Boys. They're going to be rolling around in a truck. I've also got 2 Killrigs, which is kind of my personal choice that I don't see run all that much. And then I've got a unit of 3 Scrap Jets and a unit of 3 Rucka Trucker Squeak Buddies. And then finally, I've got Makari as my third HQ choice. So there's a couple of cool things about this list that I was surprised we don't see more. When the Killrigs came out, we really kind of, people kind of lost their marbles over them, to be honest. But the irony was that GW sort of screwed the pooch, so to speak, because they didn't supply any. Because of supply chain issues, they released the rules, but especially here in Australia, you actually couldn't buy the kit. It wasn't in stock anywhere. So I have never seen one of these on the table before I started playing them. And I know some other people have tried them. I don't pretend to be a trailblazing connoisseur of just picking something off the shelf and using it. But it's certainly interesting to see that it hasn't been used all that much. These things are big, repulsor-like defensive platforms that hold 10 guys, and they shoot. They're psychers. They're characters. They kind of do a bit of everything.
They're like the new and improved Hive Tyrant, aren't they?
They kind of are, right? And it's alarming that they're, about as expensive as a Hive Tyrant. It's a bit distressing, actually. They're 190 points, and they do a lot of scary things.
Yeah, having played you, with a couple of those kill rigs and Gaz, the versatility that they add to the list as another layer of it's essentially like a truck that can fight, right? There's many ways that people can engage with transports to tie them up or to keep them backed up. You can't really do that with this kill rig because it fights, it shoots, it casts.
Yeah. It does all sorts of different things. And, look, there are a few things that it does that I think are reasonably unique for transports. I think it's the only character transport in the game. I don't think there's any other sort of example of that. And one of the things that's really bizarre, or sort of, it is well known though, is that orcs, all their rerolls are for character and core.
Mm-hmm.
So what that kind of means is that obviously my kill rigs get all the benefits from Gazgul and a war boss. You can cast psychic powers on them. You can buff them up sky high. And really sort of the creme de la creme of it all is they can benefit from all of the strats that affect characters too. Namely, they can fight on death, which is just a bit how you're going. Sometimes when, you run in to kill a transport to stop me getting out, and then you're like, oh, he's actually just going to hit me when he dies and then disembark, because a standard trick that I do in my army is when people try and wrap the kill rigs to stop me from disembarking, the kill rig fights on death and then I disembark in terms of sequence of events. So you sort of get to be able to make space for yourself and then get out, which is always handy.
That's great.
But yeah, it's a list with buggies, so it can shoot. It's a list with 3 different psychers, so it can do a lot of mortal wounds, and it does a lot of damage in combat primarily. I'm really interested in terms of how I go, because as far as like list selection goes, I've been playing Thousand Suns for a long time, and it's weird for me to have any melee damage above 2. I'm really not used to having anything that actually hits. But yeah, that's my list, man.
Nice. I'm terrified of it. I would like to dodge you. I'll get the small wins to draws, mate. You can have the big wins. You stay the fuck away from me. And
I don't have any mutate landscape anymore, so there's no way I'm getting 100.
Oh, no.
Can't do it.
Wow, Liam not getting 100. Wow, that's going to be huge. But yeah, no, I'm keen to see it, man. I think you're going to do really well.
Thanks.
And we'll see which pod we land in at day 3. But I guess I'm taking the old faithful Deathwatch that I've really enjoyed playing for a while now. I've jumped into a few other factions, but I think Deathwatch has really found its I've found home with Deathwatch in 9th. Running a battalion, I was really tossing up whether I should take the Army of Renown, the Kill Team Strike Force. It's so fun to play, but turns out Marine bodies die at the moment, so I went away from that and just took a regular Deathwatch battalion. But long story short, it's 3 Redempted Dreadnoughts. We've got some Proteus kill teams with 5 shotguns, and then some Bikers and Vanguard vets that have some cool combat squad versatility. We've got just 5 Infiltrators with a Helix as my compulsory 3 troops. We've got Captain, Tech Marine, Lieutenant, the basic stuff, giving out a 5-up Invo Aura and Rights of War for the Dreadnoughts, which is handy. We've got a Tech Marine with the +1 to hit against fly, which I thought was an interesting meta pick with all the Talos, Kronos, and maybe a Harridan flying around. I thought I wouldn't leave home without it. One thing I've been enjoying on the Reaver Lieutenant is Lord of Deceit, being able to jump, my Phobos units forward and back and muck around with the deployment and taking away space in the midboard where I need it. It's been a lot of fun, and I think it's been pretty impactful. I've added a unit of 3 Eliminators, just bolt snipers on 2 dudes and the carbine on the Sarge, just for some move, shoot, move action. That's been actually super fun recently, and a little 75-point infantry unit that can forward deploy is actually pretty handy in Marine armies at the moment when everything else is like 100 points plus to trade. And then, Old Faithful Centurions, Judicia, and then added a Whirlwind Scorpius in, which I was umming and ahhing about for a long time. But I thought against stuff like Grey Knights, against, all the little like Hellion units and stuff around, I thought, having that was nice to add a bit of pressure. And playing around with some of the other Deathwatch secondaries, like the killing secondaries and stuff, I thought having a little Scorpius that could reach out and pepper is a good idea, and I almost put in a normal Whirlwind for the fight last, but I added a Judy instead. So we'll see how it goes. I'm excited to see if it does as well interstate as some of the fun I've been having here.
So there's some special, Dineeth tech in that list, but also, Dineeth, you're a bit of a special snowflake at this event. How many Deathwatch players are there?
Oh, a grand total of 2, mate, and we both have very, very similar lists. So it'll be good if we get a little Watch Fortress v Watch Fortress battle. So
you're the alien. No, you're the alien.
But I'm keen to have a good time. I know there'll be a few armies that kind of fuck me up. But I'll see how hard I can push in them. And I think one of the things we talked about is on a 3-day event, 8 rounds, taking an army that's relatively straightforward to pilot and you've got the reps in and you don't have to think too much about stuff and you can focus your attention on the little minute details rather than all the big stuff that'll wear you down is important. And, looking at what I really wanted to play, I didn't want to dive into like a new army like the Army of Renown. That would blow my head up playing 8 rounds with it.
Yeah.
I would rather play something.
And you've got so much experience playing the Death Watch that I think is, like you said, 8 rounds over 3 days. You want to make sure you're not like remembering stratagems wrong and like doing everything right. You kind of have to play an army that inside, backwards, and upways.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think I'm super prone to like 11 a.m. any given tournament day having a ripper migraine after round 1. And if that's going to fuck me up all weekend, I would rather play something that's just simple. So I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
The Dineeth 11 o'clock migraine is only superseded in popularity by the Dineeth 6 a.m. runny poo.
Oh, mate, I cannot sleep before events. So good luck to my roommate at Adelaide. You're going to get fucked up. But hey, on that runny note, shall we move on to the lists, mate? Do you want to take it away with your first list of choice?
Sounds good. So we have picked a couple of lists. I'm going to start off talking about a Death Guard list. And I love this list because, first of all, it's played by a guy called Shannon Mikic. And secondly, he's named his list Operation Overmelter, which is a completely reasonable name for this list. Now, this list interests me because I love mech armies. It's Death Guard, it's Poxmongers, and there is literally one model in this army that is not a vehicle. It is it's about as mech can get. And one of the reasons why I love it so much is that, as he said, he's basically got as many multi-damage weapons as he can into a list, which is actually a really good pick in the current meta with Meat Mountain being around, and with Crusher Stampede being around. In many ways, Death Guard mech is the OG Crusher Stampede, right? It's neg 1 damage, 5 up invo. That is literally what Crusher Stampede does. So if that profile is good, then if it's good on a Carnifex, it's good on a fetid bloat drone. So anyway, this guy's playing Poxmongers, which means that the vehicles can shoot blast weapons in combat, and it gets access to a relic that picks a unit and gives it a 4-up invo if it's a demon engine. So it's really, really good. He started off and he's got a single Chaos Lord. This is the one dude who has legs in this list. Everyone else is a vehicle. He's got that 4-up invo relic, and he's got the Sanguis Flux Contagion, which is worth looking up. It combos extremely well with everything else in this list. He's then gone ahead and taken 2 Chaos Contemptor Dreadnoughts. What's awesome about these guys is he has not gone the double Volkites, and I'll talk about that in a sec. What he has gone is he's got the Multi-Melter and the Dreadnought Chain Fists. This is actually sick for a couple of different reasons, and I'll get there in a moment. He's also got 3 fetid bloat drones, all with the flesh mowers. He is ready.
He's also got motherfuckers.
Buzz buzz. He's also got 3 units of 3 Mephitic Blight Haulers, and in case you guys haven't versed these before, these guys have a multi-melter and a missile launcher each. So we're now approaching. Actually, hang on. Does anything in this army? Oh no, yeah, never mind. And then in the heavy support section, it's the standard 2 Plague Burst Crawlers with entropy cannons. To put this in perspective, every single model in this army either does D6 plus 2 damage or D3 plus 3 damage. There is no model in this army that doesn't do high quality AP4 multi damage. It's apart from the flesh mowers, of course, but they are melee prone. I love the fact that he's gone this route with the Chaos Contemptors because it means that they can go out on their own, they can fight in combat, and they can shoot. They're not prone to being tagged like other Contemptors are. And probably more importantly, from what we've seen of Uprising Adelaide, the terrain is going to be reasonably dense. And I think that it's a really good call to go with some more melee-orientated Contemptors over perhaps the Volkites. So all in all, Dineeth, this is a mech army that starts with 7 CP. It knows how it's going to use the CP. And it actually is hard to put down. Everything's got invo saves, 4-up invo saves on a unit of haulers every turn. And boy, I just like it. And I
Man,
have a lot of
that's
respect for the dude who takes all Death Guard mech to any tournament. Love it.
yeah. This is Operation Stand Behind a Wall for me. Like, oh my goodness, that's a lot of
Yeah,
melter.
I have so my pro for my army. It relies on the durability of a toughness 8 chassis. There is almost no shooting in this list. Actually, hang on. Apart from the Chaos Lords frag grenades
Oh,
and
the
the Plague
combi,
Burst crawlers stubbers
the combi
and
bolters on the fucking
and the combi
dreadnoughts, right?
bolter. Yep. Apart from that, everything in the list is strength 8. There is no strength 5, 6, 7 shooting in the list.
And like even when the mowers are on you, you go down to T7, right? So like they just go through you as well.
Man. 100%. And this not only is this a good list, I think this is great meta pick. I think it's awesome into Meat Mountain. I think it's awesome into Crusher Stampede. I think it's great because the invos and the neg 1 damage really add up. And I think also it's probably one of the few lists that has a shot of blowing a Harridan up in a turn.
Yep, I agree. I think this can really take it to the big bugs, and the big Talos units and stuff. You can't really afford to stick 3 Talos out in front of this army, can you?
Yeah, exactly. So look, that's my first pick. What's your first pick, Dineeth?
So I'm going to talk about a Space Marine list because I like Marines and I think Marines are in an awkward spot at the moment. I'm going to talk about an Iron Hands list. No, everyone, it's not LVO CanCon 2020. It's 2022. But I'm going to talk about an Iron Hands list. Is Kieran Magazin's Iron Hand list. Now, there's one part of this list that I love, and I'll get to it at the end. But we've got a Primaris Lieutenant with Rights of War, the Vox of Spiritum to increase the range on that, which was really nice. We've got a Tech Marine, and we've got an Infiltrator unit, which I think is really nice for most Marine lists to stick out the front and just be a little bit of a nuisance. It's got a Comms Array, which is kind of cute. Gets a few rerolls. Some company veterans, a Relic Contemptor with March of the Ancients, making that guy a cute little character. A multi-melter land speeder, a Grav dev squad. So we've got 4 Grav cannons and a Cherub, and a 5-man heavy melter rifle eradicator unit. So already packing a lot of punch, and a drop pod. And then we've got another Iron Hands detachment with a chaplain, another infiltrator unit, some Blade Guard company vets, 2 more Devastator units, which are multi-melter units with 4 multi-melters and a Cherub, and another drop pod. So double pod Iron Hands list with infiltrators to screen. To add, this Iron Hands list is a successor, which is Long Range Marksman and Master Artisan. So essentially, you've got 8 melters and 4 Grav Cannons plus Cherubs plus Signums dropping down turn 1 with drop pods. If they're picked defender, they get infiltrators out the front to really bump the lineup. That's killing a lot of shit turn 1. That is killing a massive amount of shit turn 1. You've got Blade Guards and Eradicators to come up after that. So like you said with that Death Guard list, Liam, that, packs a punch and stays alive. This one packs the punch, hopes you're dead enough so they don't die in return because they're just some Marine bodies. But then behind all those, drop pods and stuff, you've got company veterans bodyguarding a character Contemptor Dreadnought in the backfield. So I'm excited.
Man, if you think about it, right, the character Contemptor Dreadnought is kind of like at its zenith because we live in a meta now where Hive Guard and Squig Buggies are so prevalent that being out of line of sight doesn't necessarily keep you safe, but being unshootable sure as hell does.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And what's a Hive Guard unit do? Going to spend all its shooting blowing up 3 company veterans?
Yeah.
And then there's another unit of 2 company veterans next door.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's spectacular, man. It's great, and I'm excited to see if it can get the jump and beat some of these big mech lists, because this really can put the heat on some of these big neg 1 damage armies, like an Orc army that doesn't have commandos, or like a Nids Crusher army that doesn't have a good screen. If this goes first and really pops off, it's exciting stuff. So props to you, Karen. Well done repping the Marines. Well done repping the Iron Hands. I know in Europe they're getting a lot of success, and I'm keen to see how you go, mate. What's your second list, Liam?
So my second list, I'm going to be talking about Alexander, and I'm going to butcher this. He knows I will. Eglexos. Now, look, I say it slightly humorously, but Dineeth mentioned to me before we started recording this podcast that we actually spoke about one of Alexander's lists before VTC,
Mhm.
way back in May, when he, the new AdMech Codex, was running a super significant Horde AdMech list. It just had so many bodies, all the doggos, and very few high points models, just so many models, and he played the mission really well. Even better, I actually ended up versing Alexander at VTC, which is one of the hardest games I played in the entire event. I really came to fear the AdMech Horde, and he has come back again, and he has at this time decided to play I'm going to call it an AdMech. I don't think it's a Horde. But
It's like an
a really
MSU
unique,
horde kind of thing, right?
kinda. It's a really unique list. Now,
Mhm.
full disclosure, Alexander and I have actually played a game on TTS, and we've been talking a little bit on and off about both Uprising and just the state of the meta in general. And this is a list that he has been playing for a while, and he's played with a huge amount of success. So I think this is definitely a list to watch. I really think it's got a lot of metal to it. So it's a single battalion with an Imperial agent. So it's got a Calexis in it as well. It's one battalion of Agrippina. Now, Agrippina is very nasty in that it lets you brace to defend out in the open, and also gives you an extra AP if you're within half range. That extra AP sounds, look, okay, sure, that's fine. But when you realize this army actually puts out hundreds and hundreds of shots, it really adds up. Like, the benefit you get is multiplied by the 250 shots this can shoot a turn. So he's got a single Dominus with, now look, before I get into talking about this list, I'm sorry. When I talk about AdMech units, I am not going to try and say the proper nouns and the made up pseudo Latin
Just
words
say
that
the
all of this
reroll
garbage
thing.
is.
Yeah.
Exactly, right. So he has a Dominus. The Dominus is the Warlord, and he gives some rerolls. And then there's an Engine Seer, which is also upgraded to be one of the Engine Seers that can do some of the special actions. He's a Cartogrammatist. My God, GW. Anyway, that's a conversation for another time. His three troops choices are some Rangers, a unit of Vanguard, and then this is where I start loving it. His elite slot, maxed out, 6 elites choices, 3 units of 10 Corpuscari Electro Priests, 150 points. One of them has been upgraded with the Teleportarium. He then has 7 Rust Stalkers with the Tempora Cordia, which is the 1 CP upgrade sort of relic that you can put on a Sergeant. Then 5 more Rust Stalkers with the Blades, 5 more Infiltrators with the Tasers. Before I even talk about the rest of the list, the Corpuscari for AdMech are drastically underrated.
They're spectacular, man.
They put out amazing amounts of volume of Strength 5 AP1, or wait, AP2 shooting. But even more importantly, in this list, that's what I said before, in this list, it obviously goes up a whole notch because Agrippina allows you to boost the AP of all of your shooting essentially just by being close. And that's why I love this list, because it lets you get close. Talk about that in a sec. He's got the standard unit of 10 Taraxi with the programmed retreat, which has become sort of a bit of a plug and play in most AdMech armies, and then 2 Scorpius Disintegrators with the Belarus cannons. To round out the list, and the reason why I really like the specialness of this list, the uniqueness, that's a nice word, Liam, is the 4 Scorpius Dune Riders. These are the transports. So this army has 6 AdMech hover cars, 4 of which are filled with dudes. Now, I might be sort of picking and choosing a little bit here, but my approach to playing melee-focused orcs was that I think the transports are what really sets the army apart, and the transports is how the army manages to function in, to be honest, an edition where damage is so oppressive. Alexander seems to have reached a pretty similar conclusion. He's got a lot of really hard-hitting, close-range shooting and close-range, obviously, melee units, and he's taken the transports to get them where they need to be and to be defensive against the things that normally kill them. For example, the Dune Riders basically stop all of the infantry being blown up immediately by little things like mortars for Imperial Guard, which is a significant problem for toughness 3 infantry. Probably most importantly in the current meta, squig buggies kill all of this stuff so fast, but not if it's in transports. This is a list that is quite MSU. It can be wherever it needs to be. It can be suspiciously fast because of the different the Skitarii protocols and whatnot. They're not called protocols, and he's going to probably yell at me at the event for mispronouncing many of these.
Yeah.
Thank you. But The reality is this list has flexibility. It's got damage. It's got a little bit of obsec to be where it needs to be. And my favorite part is it's Agrippina and it's transport based. All of those transports have like 12 to 16 stubber shots each, and they are not to be trifled with. This is a cool list. I really hope Alex does well.
What if I told you that this army gets full rerolls against vehicles?
Then perhaps it would be incredibly good
because it does with the relic.
Yep, that's the Eye of Z Lexum, isn't it?
Crazy, right? Yeah, I'm scared.
Yeah,
I'm terrified of this. Just letting Alex know over the airwaves. I'm fucking scared of this list.
My whole army is pretty much mech. A lot of the orc armies are too. This is an army that wants to shred vehicles, and it will do it. It actually has the volume to do it.
And there's so much really cool tech, like the programmed retreat on the Taraxi and stuff. That's really cool tech in this list in case I get tied up and things like that. So, no, I'm excited to see how he goes. This is another list that I'm keen to see how it pairs up into the big meta stuff, like the Meat Mountain, the Crusher Stampede, and even like these Death Guard lists. So you could give it a good run for its money because all damage one, rerolling, spectacular.
All damage one rerolling, and I think even though I know it only rerolls against vehicles, all that damage one basically makes Artists of Flesh and Crusher Stampede get no benefit out of their detachment. Yep. And it's all AP 1 and 2. It's like it really doesn't care if you have a 5-up invo. In fact, in many ways, it bypasses all of the durability of both of those factions, good invos and neg 1 damage. Yeah. It's actually awesome. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I'm super excited. And there's no it's one of those lists that you feel there's no wastage. Like when you're shooting stuff, it's like cool. It's just little stuff shooting at big stuff, but at least it's just peppering through. It's not like you're wasting like autocannon rounds into neg 1 damage. So it's lovely, man.
You feel kind of bad at the moment when you have plasma guns, to be perfectly honest, and you're shooting anything because neg 1 damage is so prevalent.
Yeah, 100%. Like I think some factions are just auto locked into neg 1 damage just because other factions are doing well with neg 1 damage. Like it's kind of like the Marines example with Redemptors, right? Like they're solid because everything around them is kind of similar to a Redemptor.
Yeah, 100%. So look, that's Alex's list. What was the second list you wanted to talk about, man?
I'll talk about Chris Wright's Drukhari now, and I think you were going to talk about Matt's Tyrannid list.
Yes.
So yeah, all right. So Chris Wright, who won the last CanCon 2020 with Iron Hands, with the Chris Viathan list. I'm going to open up his Drukhari list now. So I've been chatting a fair bit with Chris actually with WTC stuff. He had a little run with Deathwatch, and now he's loving Drukhari. He took out an event in New South Wales quite recently with Drukhari as well. But he's really leaning into a really stocky, durable Artists of Flesh-based list with some cool tech. So starting out, he's got a Drukhari Battalion, which is really exciting. It's a real space raid. So we've got Artists of Flesh, we've got Cabal the Black Heart, of course, and then we've got Custom Cult of Test of Skill and Stimulant Innovators. And Test of Skill is the +1 to wound, I believe, against vehicles. And the Stimulant Innovators get combat drug bonuses for a turn, which is really nice on some of the witches. So we've got a big core to the Archon, 3 Slith 4 Urgle. We've got the Fight Last Archon with the Gin Blade, which is really nice. We've got Master Regenist Homunculus with the Animus Vitae, which we're kind of seeing as a staple in a lot of Drukhari lists, to put 3 wounds back on the meaty stuff and throw the fun grenade to push Power from Pain up a battle round. We've got a Hypec Succubus, which is really fun, with Precision Blows and the Triptych Whip. And then we've got some cabs, and then we've got a big fat unit of 20 racks with an Ossifactor, another big fat unit of 20 racks with an Ossifactor, and then 2 small units of racks, or 3 small units of racks. 2 small units of racks and a witch unit. We have 5 Grotesques, a big sexy brick of 15 Hellions, and then 3 units of 2 Talos, with a really nice setup of the Talos Gauntlet to get to Strength 8, and an Ichor Injector to do some mortal wounds on the hit, and some Heat Lancers. So essentially 6 Talos, 5 Grotesques, big Hellion unit, and some big chunky troops choices. So I'm really keen to see how this plays, because it's not just what we've been expecting and seeing with 6 Cronus, 6 Talos, 10 Grotesques, It goes away from that and it adds the racks in. And one of the things that we were looking at, Liam, when we played against Meat Mountain, and one of the things that like we tried to do is make use of the fact that a lot of the Meat Mountain lists don't really have much obsec. And because they don't have much obsec, and
Yeah.
because they don't have as much like big fat units that can heroic out and things, you can really annoy their primary while because let's face it, they're going to get a lot of secondary. Like they're going to get all their herd points, they're going to get their while we stand on some games, or their what grind them down or whatever they decide to take. But you can really hamper their scoring if you can score secondaries on your own and just gimp their primary. This list turns that on its head. It says, I've got all these Talos and this grotesque unit that's going to run at you and really hurt you. And I've got this Hellion unit that can come out from wherever it wants and really hurt you. But then I've got all this OBSEC infantry. It looks like, adding it up, it's like 65 or something, OBSEC or 60 OBSEC models that are going to sit there and do stuff, do actions, and these big 20 mans that are going to be particularly hard to shift. All in all, as well, not giving up that many, no prisoners points either. So you can't really weaponize on the fact that he's brought a massive horde. I'm really excited to see how this plays because it kind of solves that big issue that they can't defend their own primary. And man, I'm gonna be surprised if this thing doesn't score less than like 75 points every game.
Isn't that just, I guess, going off on a little bit of a tangent? Isn't that just the absolute Chris Wright special, though?
It is
finding
right.
finding something that is special and plugging all of the holes in it that might exist. Like, let's be realistic, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The Meat Mountain is an immensely powerful archetype of army. Like, it's just, it's crazy. But then this list, like you said, has the OBSEC to back it up, and it also has the kind of reasonably unique tech of the big Hellion unit, which I think actually solves a lot of problems. It's also amazing in the Drukhari mirror because Drukhari need to use their characters, and Hellions are great at running after characters or using that flyby strat, eviscerating flyby or whatever it's called. All in all, this list is just good. I think it's very, very good, and we know that Chris is a really top-notch player.
Yeah, 100%. Like that, like a Talos unit, right? Like think of 2 or 3 Talos. You charge that with 20 racks, it's done. It's stuck there. Like it's not doing anything productive. The racks are just gonna lock in and just tank it. So
it'd be so annoying.
Yeah, what's 15 attacks gonna do to that? So it's especially artists racks. But yeah, I'm really really excited to see how Chris goes. I personally think Chris will be up there in the top pod. At the end, I think he's got the tools to do it. And if he catches, the good matchups, he's a contender, I think, to take out the whole event. So look, props to him. Great list, Chris, and I'm really keen to catch up and have a chat and have some beers at the event as well.
I think Chris will do awesome.
Yeah, and Liam, you're going to talk about Matt Di Girolamo's Tyranids list.
Girolamo,
yeah,
100%. So, Dineeth has just mentioned Chris's list, and I think Meat Mountain is going to be reasonably common because it is so powerful. But then there's also the more scary kind of meaty Tyranidy nonsense, which is the shooty meat. Oh my god, that's what it is. This is literally what. Wow, I can't believe it took me that long. This is shooty meat, or like meat molehills. I don't know. So Crusher Stampede is the new kid on the block. It's the most recent rules release. And to put it simply, it's incredibly powerful. For those of you who haven't played it or haven't seen it before, it can be summarized really, really quickly. It's a Tyranid army that can't take anything that has less than 3 wounds. And for that, basically what you get is that everything in your army gets 5 up invo, absolutely everything, which is incredible. Everything in your army that's a monster counts as its wound characteristic remaining for that many models on an objective. If you have 10 wounds, you count as 10 models on an objective, and all of the monsters get -1 damage. Basically, you become a Talos regardless of where you came from, which is just incredible for Tyranids. So this list, Matt's list, is a really good example of what a pretty optimized Crusher Stampede list can look like. There are some other variants that I'll briefly touch on later, which are pretty common. There are a lot of these Tyranid lists going to Uprising Adelaide. So, like pretty much all of them are, it's the Army of Renown, the Crusher Stampede. It is a High Fleet Leviathan detachment. Almost invariably they are because of the supplement for High Fleet Leviathan. What's important here is that the Army of Renown means you don't get the benefit of being Hive Fleet Leviathan, but you keep the keyword, which is super important because then you can just use all the stratagems and the Warlord traits and everything else.
Massive.
So it always starts off, most of these lists, with a Hive Tyrant. Now, this Hive Tyrant has around about 7 items of war gear, a Warlord trait, 2 psychic powers, an adaptive physiology, a synaptic link, an alpha leader beast upgrade, and then some more other nonsense. To summarize this model, which literally has, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 points next to its name in Battlescribe. Basically, it is a 12 wound monster with a 4-up invo. It's neg 1 to wound. It hits with 4 damage flat, which goes to 5 damage on a wound roll of a 6 with AP 4/5. It can fight twice, fight on death, and can be moved twice with the Swarm Lord, which, spoiler alert, is the second HQ choice in this list. It is an incredibly potent model. It's fast. It's fly. It can do pretty much everything, and it's neg 1 to hit, 4-up invo, and you can cast Catalyst on it for 4-up invo, for 5-up Feel No Pain. All in all, it's not to be trifled with. Second HQ, as I said, is the Swarm Lord. Now, this Swarm Lord is really, really cool because in the Crusher Stampede, you get access to some new psychic powers. Read all of them. The one that stands out is give a unit a 4-up invo. That means any of these monsters gets a 4-up invo. And the Swarm Lord is very reliable. We've then got 3 units of 3 Tyranid Warriors. These guys are basically the only troops choice you can take for a Crusher Stampede because they fill the requirement of having 3 wounds. And all 3 of these guys have the Synaptic Link upgrade, which allows them to pick a unit and give it +1 to hit. If you haven't both the Synaptic Links, they're a new Tyranid thing, and they just increase the efficiency of everything. Next on the list, we have a Haruspex, which is a reasonably sort of a unique addition to this Tyranid army. It's got murderous size on it, which means that it does an additional damage on its weapons and the additional AP. That is actually awesome on the Haruspex because what that thing has is volume in combat. So you're really going here for volume and +1 damage, which obviously is amazing. Mm-hmm. Then we have a unit of 6 Hive Guard and a unit of 5 Hive Guard. A Maliceptor to round out the elite slot, and then the heavy support slot is 3 single Tyrannifexes. This army rocks in with a number of huge, hard-to-put-down monsters backed up by some of the most efficient Adelanocite shooting in the game, and then backed up again by some of the greatest mobility in the game. The Hive Tyrant, I believe, moves 16 inches, and he can move twice. So that's a 32-inch move. Forgive me if I've misquoted that. But not even that. Even the other Tyranid monsters that aren't flying, moving them twice allows them to basically cover the midboard of any deployment zone in a single turn. And to reinforce that, this is just like Meat Mountain, and everything's got invo saves. Everything is neg 1 damage. But I think this kind of takes the cake in some respects because these models count for their wounds characteristic on objectives. That Hive Tyrant is 12 models on an objective. If you have 10, Sacrosants and you're playing Sisters, but they're not OBSEC for some ungodly reason, then this Hive Tyrant will steal your objective from 10 Sacrosants. It is a really powerful list. It is awesome fun to play. And this kind of synergizes quite well because the Tyrannifex the Tyrannifex and the Haruspex has volume and the rest of the stuff has quality. So this kind of has the damage that it needs to fight certain matchups. It's also worth noting that when you start swinging at 5 damage flat on melee weapons, even neg 1 damage isn't going to start saving you anymore.
Yeah.
It's gonna kill what it needs to. This is a cool list, and I actually don't think I've met Matt before. So I really look forward to coming and saying hi, Matt, at the event.
Yeah, look, I'm really excited to see a Haruspex on the table. I've literally never seen one played. I've seen how disgusting that thing looks on, the GW box artwork. But looking at its profile,
it's actually one of the most terrifying models, right?
Yeah,
looking at it,
it looks like an inverted gastrointestinal tract. It's insane. But it gets 4 D3 attacks at neg 1 AP D3 damage +1 damage though. So life's good.
+1 damage and +1 AP.
Yeah, massive. Wow. So it can actually get in and just be annoying. And it's cool to see that yes, sure, Crusher Stampede is pretty pretty strong. It's pretty impactful, but it's cool to see these like big bugs get a bit of a new life, like the Tyrannofexes, right? Like people ran them with the was it the rupture cannons before? Like now we're seeing them run around with acid spray, just being annoying, and they're like the things that'll go out and potentially contest objectives and be a screen with a flamer. So that's exciting.
100%.
But yeah, dude, that's sick. I'm keen to see how he goes. Yeah, I've got one more list to go through, and it's our good friend, Mr. Hayden Waldock from Brisbane, and
Here we go.
yeah, a couple of renowned players are taking Sisters of Battle to Uprising Adelaide. You know, Jeremy Martino from Victoria, our good friend Joshua Brody from New South Wales. So, you know, it's in a lot of places people are looking at Sisters and going, you know, they're a good pick in the meta. Josh McMillan as well. You know, taking them to Adelaide. So, looking at Ducky's list, he's first got a battalion of Valorous Heart, and essentially Valorous Heart kicks down the AP of stuff shooting and fighting at it by one. So it's nice and defensive. He's got a very, very hard to kill Canoness. He's got Celestine with Gemini, and he's got Morven Val as the Warlord. 3 little units of Sisters, nothing special to report there. But then he's got 3 units of 9 Celestian Sacrosancts, which essentially are 2-up save Sisters that tick AP down by 1, which is particularly resistant to certain, you know, specific artillery things that are going crazy in the meta at the moment.
And have a 4-up invo.
Yeah, 4-up invo base, huge. Then he's got 2 little Crusaders, Dogmata, Hospitaller. The Hospitaller is sexy in this because it can bring you know, D3 back, and it also gives those little models 6-up FNP, which is a good time.
Disgusting.
Yeah, then he's got an Outrider of Our Martyred Lady with a Canoness, Blade of Sacrifice, Martyr's Strength, Word of the Emperor. I believe Word of the Emperor is the one that is fight last. Is that correct?
I believe so. It's where you do it, like the sacred ability where you do it at the start of your turn. You spend a miracle dice and it gets an aura of fight last.
Yeah, something like that. Oh, I think the fight last might be just a specific. Oh, I'll have to look it up. Anyway, he has access to fight last. Everyone, get scared. 2 units of 2 units of 4 Repentia. 2 units of Seraphim, which are really cool. 5 girl, and there's 4 Inferno pistols in there. 2x2 Infernos, so that's exciting. A Zeph unit of 8 with swords, and a multi-melter. Well, bunch of multi-melter, 4 multi-melter, and a combi flamer on Sarge. Retributor unit with a cherub, so with a rhino as well. So really exciting to see the flying girls come back with the melter, you know, with the Inferno pistols. I'm excited to see what Ducky does with that tech. And look, just a really solid core of 27 Sacrosancts. And looking at stuff that's going to shoot them. If you look at, let's say, let's look at Hive Guard, for example, shooting the Sacrosancts.
A fair example, considering what I just mentioned.
Yeah. 12 shots, let's say 13 hits with 3s to hit and exploding 6s. Let's say they get lucky, yeah? We get 2s to wound, let's say 11 wounds, yeah? We're in cover, so we're on a 1-up save. When ignoring the cover with the Hive Guard, so back to 2-up. But because the neg 2 goes to neg 1, we're taking 3-up saves against Hive Guard. So we're losing, let's say, 3 Sacrosancts from a Hive Guard volley. Let's say that.
I think that's fair.
Let's say 3 to 4, and then next turn D3 come back. Oh, actually, then there's a feel no pain, so it might save 1. So let's say 3.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And then next turn D3 come back. So essentially, a Hive Guard volley does virtually nothing of note to Sacrosancts, which is lovely. Absolutely amazing.
The real like creme de la creme of the Sacrosant, though, is that it's not so much what a Sacrosant is, it's the fact that they've got the bodyguard rule.
Oh, yeah.
So a Sacrosant might be semi-impossible, like a unit of them might be semi-impossible for Hive Guard to put down. What that actually means is that it's going to be turn 3, 4, even perhaps never, that the Hive Guard get to actually shoot the units that are doing all the legwork. And a lot of these Sisters lists, man, for toughness 3, you know, ungenetically modified random ladies who really like prayer beads, they are absolutely beat stick characters. Like they don't just slap. Some of them have amazing shooting. Val is basically a small knight on her own.
Literally a knight with rerolls.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like some of the the sister stuff is incredible, and then you add bodyguard stuff into that, and wow, you have some incredibly efficient stuff that the bodyguard rule gets mileage into.
Oh, huge. And like all of a sudden you've got this army that ramps up towards the end of the game with things like Miracle Dice and building up CP and then pushing out with OBSEC infantry. And you've got a way for it not to get damaged in the early turns of the game. And that's really cool. Really, really cool.
In many ways, these sort of lists, they're very sort of deceptive, because you look at them and you go, they're toughness 3 models, they'll be easy to put down. But, 2 up, 4 up, in cover, ignoring AP 1 and 2 and all sorts of other shit. Sorry, ignoring AP 1 and reducing AP 2 to AP 1 is all like incredibly resilient. Then a feel no pain, pseudo fearlessness. In combat, it can get rerolls, and the sacred rites mean exploding 6s. There's just so many rules for sisters that overlap to make them so potent.
Oh yeah, man, and I've just had a look at Word of the Emperor. So it's actually within 3 inches, select one enemy unit to fight last. But the miraculous ability is, you in miracle range, you ignore invulnerable saves for core and character, which is huge as well, considering the stuff that's going around at the moment. And Ducky making the call with the halberds is really interesting. So it's got some play into stuff like the tougher things, being strength 6 or 7 on the halberd. It's really 100%. Nice. Yeah.
So look, this has been a really big chat about a good spread of lists. And as always, I'm so thankful that the Aussie meta is actually quite diverse. It's got a lot of different players, and you don't sort of see the same thing over and over again. It's also, despite all of the, there's been some negativity, I think, about how prevalent Meat Mountain is. I actually think there's been a good variety of different Drukhari lists, and I don't think it's even the Crusher Stampede lists, I think a lot of them do have variety too. I mean, one of them has a Haruspex. I'm happy.
That's exciting. And, as long as I can dodge the Harridans, I'm happy, mate. I'll have a great time getting killed by that little walking, talking intestine.
That is kind of an honorable mention I'd like to put in there. With a lot of these Crusher Stampede lists have a Harridan, and the Harridan is a nearly 40 wound, toughness 8 flyer that shoots 1 billion shots and then hits you into the stratosphere. It is preposterously good.
Yeah.
It was actually, in some ways, it had play before Crusher Stampede, but now Crusher Stampede gives it a 5-up invo and neg1 damage, and it counts as like 36 models on an objective. Like, think about how weird that is.
Well, let me stop you there, Liam. It's actually got the aircraft keyword, so it can't hold objectives. Thank God.
I'm gonna go back in my lane. I'm gonna go back in my lane.
Oh man, if it could hold objectives, that would be insane. But yeah, I've had 2 practice games against the Harridan, and it's something else. Like, there are a lot of armies that will, if they have to play against the Harridan, you've just got to make the call nice and early, whether you shoot it or whether you just ignore it and fight everything else and just let it do its thing and try and win the game without it. Because the worst thing about that is like trying to go into the Harridan and then you flop on your damage and then you just get tabled, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think the Harridan is in an interesting spot because it's so ridiculous, but also it's so big that it can't deploy in Dawn of War, which is its own interesting thing to consider. I am curious how these Harridan sort of builds go, but I think that if you're not ready, and if, to be honest, the Harridan rolls well, not many people can do much.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see. But look, on that note, I think we'll wrap it up for the episode. And Liam,
No
as always, it's been a pleasure. Everyone at home, stay safe. Don't get hit by the Harridan. Fight the rest of the army. You'll be okay. And you'll hear a recap that we do after Uprising Adelaide as well, and we'll be hoping to have a lot to talk about. I'm keen to spend some time with the guys. We've got an Airbnb booked for a bunch of us. It's got a pool, so we'll be swimming in that pool after every day.
15 nerds to drink beers.
Yeah, it'll be great. But hey, everyone at home, thanks for listening. If you like our stuff, give us a like on Facebook, subscribe to us on iTunes. We do have a Patreon to help cover our costs on www.patreon.com/SnowBlokes. And if you have any questions about any of the lists at Adelaide or how we're going, shoot us a message on the podcast. But yeah, take it easy. Have a good weekend. Call your mother.